Hey everybody, welcome back. It's me, Uncle Greg, aka the Free American Spirit, and today we're talking about the bass boat turning into a John boat. That's right, everybody thinks I'm crazy because usually you turn a John boat into a bass boat, but I don't want all that junk. And we're going to talk about the metal work we had done. So let's go up here to the front because what you need to learn is a couple tips from Uncle Greg. First thing is, I had this front bow done. I was going to fill all these holes. This is the old one. And I said, no, that ain't gonna work. So I put a whole new piece on. You can see how much thicker this piece is, 1/8 versus 1/16 or whatever that was, which is a whole lot stronger. So today's tip is very important. I'm going to tell you in just a second, but remember, subscribe, hit that like button, leave a comment, and use those Amazon links because it brings you videos like this. I get a little small commission, so that helps me out. Back to the tip. Today's tip is, when you're talking to the welder dude, ask him if he has a brake, because when we sat down, I was making sure we were on the same page. And I said, hey, I want you to put this piece on, then I want you to use your brake and bend it down. You know, I wanted this piece to come to about here, then bend it down, and then bend it just a little lip like this. So when I redid the deck, this would actually be here, then there'd only be a little casting deck, and there'd be a deck here where I could, you know, mess with the motor and put the chain or whatever. He did come a little bit, not much. You can see by this old piece that he came about, I don't know, 5 inches maybe, and really didn't pay attention. Second thing is, he didn't use a brake. So now he's got this good 1/8 inch tied to this 1/16 inch, the old stuff, which it'll still work fine, whatever. But you know, come on, man. You could have used a brake. It'd take you 5 seconds to go make one bend and another bend, and then this would have been out to about right here, and that's all I would have needed. Of course, this whole thing would be up, but he didn't. So all that extra weld, which isn't really that great looking, you know, that costs you time, you know, at the shop. Also, he would have cut it like this, and this would have been flush, and he would have welded this. Now, with all that being said, this is still a lot stronger than that 1/16 ever was. But the point is, you know, do what I asked you to do. Now moving on down here, you can see I'm starting to pressure wash this out and looking for stuff. I just grind a little bit and looking for spots. But I want to take you to the back. Now the back transom is not too bad. He soldered all this in, or welded all this in. This is nice. And remember, these used to have the holes. We just put plates because we don't need that stupid exhaust thing anymore. So that's good. Now this is 1/8 inch. We took the complete transom all the way out. I got rid of one of those holes and only have one. That'll be for the sump pump. This is the drain on the splash guard. And then of course the bottom part. And then he drilled the 4 holes. I hope he did those right. We'll find out when I go to put an engine on. He messed up on these a little bit, but I can waller them out some for the tie downs. But this is 1/8 inch all the way around, and then inside is 1¼ inch tubing. Okay, and then 1/8 inch again. So that right there is already quadruple the strength. And then it comes all the way down to here, just like the wood did, but it's all welded up together and tacked. So these supports here, these are all now tacked into place on the other side there. You'll see them up there, but anywho, those are tacked into place. These have been retacked into place. This whole bottom, you know, in every compartment's been welded all the way down. You know, this is much stronger than it was. I did tell him to put another piece here so that these would fit better, but he just welded them. And so maybe later I come up with another piece just to make that look a little better and slide it down and weld it in place. But we can argue about rivet flexibility versus weld, but I'm telling you right now, this is stronger than it's ever been from the factory. So you can look at that and just see that, you know, those are all tacked in place. You know, they're not going anywhere. You can see over there the welds in place there to hold these. There's another bracket like that on that side. So that thing's going nowhere. So now my next projects are, there's a couple little leaks that I knew about. A couple of rivets. So I've been working on the trailer. I'm going to work on the trailer anyways. And I've just been banging off these side posts, these guide posts. So the guide posts are coming off. I just got that one off. That one, this is the rusty one. I just grinded through that bolt, so this will come off here. Pull these off. And then I'll take this boat and flip it over, because working on the ground is a real pain in the butt. So I got two sawhorses right there that a friend gave me, and I got another two I bought. I'm going to have the four of us come out here, and we'll just take this whole boat and flip it right over on those sawhorses, and then I'll be able to work on the rivets. And in the meantime, there was a rivet missing right there. I already taken that one out. I took that one out. I did a water test. There's two rivets right there. I don't know if you can see them. They leaked. In addition to those 4 rivets that had slow leaks that I'm going to replace, I bought some of that aluminum solder crapple that people talk about. I've seen mixed reviews on them, you know, those little sticks. See what the dog brought me? She knows who her daddy is. She knows who the man is. So I bought some of these sticks. I tried to do some right there where there was a couple little pinholes. It stopped the pinholes, but it looks like crap. And then when I got over to here, there's another spot somewhere that I did. I can't find it now because it's dirty, having grinding. But here's one right here. That's way better than it was. Now I don't know how that's going to stick in the long run, you know, but I think I'm going to go ahead, and when I get all these cleaned, I'm going to put Gluvit all over these rivets anyways after I get them over. So I'll flip it over, check all the rivets. I will plug all the holes that I see. Then I'll flip it back and do a water test again. And once I'm sure there's no more water, then I'll glove everything. And then we'll start on the bottom of the boat. This piece that went across, remember the live well went through there and came up to about here. So that's why there's that big gap. So there was a small piece that went across here, and I took that off and I used that piece up here to brace across. That's my little sandwich pass through. So when I pass out in the boat, I can still eat. And then I took these holes where the rivets were and I soldered them all up. This is probably upside down on your screen, but that's the way it is. Now I don't know if I need that additional support, but somewhere in here, probably about right here somewhere, I'm going to put a live well, because there'll be a center console. I'm going to sit probably back here, and then there'll be a little center console about right here. And so maybe I'll put the live well spanning those, and I might tie off to give a little more bracing to the sides. We'll see how that goes. But once I got all that floor out and everything, there's a couple little cracks here, and there's some on the other side. See that piece hanging off? Let's go over there. So I still got a little welding to do. Once I get done, I'll have these brackets welded back up. But this is stuff you can't tell. I couldn't tell from the bottom because it was painted, and I couldn't tell because the floor was here, and you can see all the salt, how it just ate into that from that stupid carpeted floor. So this one's got to be soldered together. That one's got a crack in it. That one has a crack in it, and it looks like they flexed, and they've already welded those years ago. So we'll finish those off and weld those a little bit, and I think it's going to be okay. That's about the biggest damage in the whole boat that I could find, other than the transom. So that's where we are with the metal. When I come back on here, I'll show you how I'm going to put those rivets in, and then we'll just talk some pros and cons about this at the end of the tape. So hang on there and let me get my rivet stuff. Now that I've pretty much done a lot of stuff on the inside, I've got all those little spaces brazed. I've got the boat off of the trailer, as you can see there, and I put it up here on the sawhorses. So a couple friends helped me do that. They actually did it all. So now I can do a couple things at once. I can be working on the trailer when my arms get tired from scraping this down. But you know, I just wanted to point out that brazing stuff is not as good as welding. This aluminum's going to flex, so I'm going to braze these. But you know, in the long run, I'm going to go over them with the epoxy and stuff like that. You know, that brazing is just not as good as aluminum welding, but I spent so much money getting this welded up and stuff, I'm already way past budget. So a note is, if your transom's bad, if you put a full aluminum transom in, you're gonna be up there, and you should really check the rest of the boat good. I thought I checked this boat pretty good, but being on the ground crawling around with all this stuff on it, it's not the same as getting it up here. So for example, I started peeling this stuff off. It just came off like, you know, real easy. So as I peel this off, I'll get the rest of this off. I see more stuff. For example, this is a Florida boat, salt water. You can see all this salt was underneath this stuff. Okay, see that salt there? Once this peeled up a little bit, salt water got up under there. And that's not too bad rubbing, but that is right there. But it's not seriously bad. But other spots I thought would be worse. So that's not too bad. But I did notice, you know, when I filled it up again with water after all that brazing and checking the couple test rivets I did, it leaked even more around this keel, and I can really see this stuff here. So I got to get this off and look at it. But there's a couple rivets that I did, but you can see right here, see how corroded that is from salt that got underneath this stuff. And there's welds that I didn't see on the floor. You know, I really didn't notice. Here's the weld. You can see it here and here where it cracked. At least they're welded. There's another one. But I didn't notice that when I was crawling on the ground because, you know, I just didn't notice. What can I tell you? Not as good as I thought it was. But the only dents on the boat, there's a small indentation here. I don't know if they actually had a hole in there. I didn't see any, you know, inside the boat, any big holes or cracks or big welds like that. So I think that's just a dent. There's one over there. So my main concern is getting all this off in the next couple days. You can see right here, you can see that boat up a little bit. So we got to get that keel straightened out some, tap that back down, re-rivet it good, get everything kind of as flush as we can get them before we seal it up. And I'm actually looking at several different seals, you know, everything from Gator Glide to that rust steel or whatever it's called, flex steel, and, you know, Gluvit and all kinds of different ones. So we'll make that decision. It'll be a while before I can get all this off. The chemicals to get all this off, I went to Lowe's and bought a bunch of different stuff. I'll share with you later. So that's another $120 to buy stuff. So I'll show you that later. Hang on. Well, guys, we're done with that little bit of brazing down here at the back. You know, you should tell me in the comments what you think about this stuff. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos. Some guys say it works. Some guys say it's going to crack because eventually all this is going to flex, which that's what I think is going to happen. But, you know, none of these YouTube videos, they all show you how the boats do, but they don't show you like 2 or 3 years later how everything held up, which is really kind of disappointing because, you know, there's a lot of options to make between brazing or welding and epoxy paint or Gluvit or flex seal or whatever you want to call it, steel, Gator Glide. They're all expensive, you know, and you want to make the best choice possible. So I haven't decided yet, but now that that's done, we'll go and show you other things that nickel and dime you to death. So before you even paint, you got to buy stuff, unless you already have it. So I had to buy some scrapers, cheap brushes. I had to buy a spray bottle to put this stuff in. This is Henry Easy Release. It's for taking carpet glue off and things like that. So I sprayed all the carpet inside. There's only 2 pieces I still can't get off. I'll respray later, but this mixes like a 1:4, but that's, you know, 17 bucks a bottle. This is some Jasco premium paint and epoxy because I know he's got epoxy. He's probably got epoxy, JB Weld, God knows what else in this thing over 30, 40 years. And that's 55 bucks a gallon. So you got to put that on. And I bought this drop cloth because once you put this stuff on, then I'll take a piece of this and lay it over, and it kind of traps the heat a little bit and helps it work. But before I get going, I gotta, you know, use these and scrape off some of this stuff. And I can tell where he put this other stuff on, other than the salt eating into it right there. There's really not that many scratch marks in here, so I don't know how well they really prepped this before they painted it. But it is peeling off. Other areas are going to be bad. So when I get some of this done, I'll let you know how it's going. There's a big ding. I'll let you know how it's going and show you some of the results. Just be prepared to spend about 150 bucks on little stuff like that. This is a side I haven't done anything to yet. you can see where the runners were, where it just, you know, scraped the boat up, and sitting on that carpet, you got salt intrusion rubbing on it, just like sandpaper, okay? Doesn't matter how tight you put your boat down, those carpets hold a lot of dirt and sand, and the vibration will just, you know, slowly sand it down every trip you make. Even when you're not on a trip, the sand is embedded under this stuff here, and it's just going to corrode because, you know, the salt is toxic, and that's what it does. Anyway, so this is the side I didn't do. This is the problem child. You can see where he really loaded stuff on really thick. So I've done nothing here yet. Then the other side, I took my little 2-inch steel scraper and scraped as much as I could off. Now it doesn't look like much, but it's a lot less knocked down. And now there's little grooves in it at various different places. A lot of the top paint came off. So hopefully, if you can see the difference there, you really caked it on here. Hopefully the solvent doesn't have to work through all the stuff that was on top. I got a lot of that off, so it'll work a little better. You know, I may have to put 2 coats. The keel's not as bent up as I thought it was on this side, which is good. I guess all that stuff over these welds where they really overloaded this boat, I guess with the combination of that wet floor and fat buddies and ice chests and live wells. All that stuff adds up to a lot of weight, and then he's probably out in the Gulf banging the, you know, the stupid 2-foot waves or whatever. You know, that's a lot of pressure on a boat like this, so we won't be doing that. I mean, we'll just hug the shoreline, and we won't be overloading it. Me and one friend, and one little cooler, one live well, and that's about it. Plus all that rotted wood is gone, there won't be any wood. But back to this. So I knocked a lot of that off. So we'll do this side first and see how it does. So I'm going to spread this stuff out. It's supposed to, like I said, eat through the epoxy and the paint and the whatever. I'm going to spread it out and put that tarp over it, that plastic, so that it retains the heat and whatnot. And let it sit a couple hours, and then we'll come back and see how it scrapes off. Be back in a minute. Hit that thumbs up, share, like, all that good stuff. All right, lessons we're learning on the aluminum. Welcome back. So that stuff, I know I complained, said it really didn't work, but just to update you. So any kind of paint takes off really good. I put 2 coats on this thing, and this is about where we're at. And what I found out is using a paint scraper is okay if it only has like 1 roll of paint or something like that. But using a wire brush, you know, I let it sit for about 15 minutes and wire brush it all, and then do it. You know, then wipe it off with the rags or the paint scraper or whatever. Works a lot better. You can see right there where the epoxy's not coming off. So I ground these welds down here, and then I took this thing, and that gets that dang epoxy off. You can see where I'm gonna have to go over where it did not come off, even after the second coat. It's just not happening. So I'll get up with that wheel and knock all that epoxy down. I have about 1/4 of that gallon left, even though I did this twice. You can see where the dust is from me grinding, because I started doing the epoxy over here. But I got about 1/4 left, and when I get all this epoxy ground down like this, you can see there's still epoxy there, but I gotta, and when I say grind, use that really stiff wire wheel. You can see where I've been taking it off. When I get it all down like that, I'll do 1 more coat of that stuff and the wire brush, and then the rest will be with the 1 or the 80 grit sandpaper or whatever. I'll get to that part. I'll tell you what I use when I get to it. So, you know, I think overall, in hindsight, I don't know if I actually needed to spend the 60 bucks on that stuff. It didn't take the paint off though, or if I should have just by hand started off with that one and then worked my way down grits. So that's a choice you're gonna have to make, but I think I'm pretty happy that I used it all in all. It loosened it up a lot, and took all the big stuff off so I could see what I'm doing, and that's a big part. I don't want to gouge the, you know, I don't want to gouge this too hard. You know what I'm saying? You can see a couple spots, but for the most part, it's coming along, man. It's a lot of work, guys. If you're going to do a boat, just to remember, once you decide if you got to rebuild that transom, you're going to put all that money into it, and make sure you really look at this boat good before you make that choice, because I'm into it now. And I'm going to finish it one way or the other, you know, just so you all can see what's happening. I mean, by now I could have gone and got a used boat, you know, with a motor probably, almost for what I have just in it right now, but we're almost there. I'm still debating on what coats I'm going to put on the bottom. I'll let you know when that happens, but the last part of this video, I'll show you when this is all the way ready for the paint job. All right, now that I got it home, I just thought I would show you. So there you can see that's coming out of the weep hole where that one rivet's leaking, and then you can see that rivet right there leaking, and that's running down the keel. But that's the rivet that had that hole in it, and then that leak is a little hole in the aluminum. And right over there where those three are, I thought I'd welded up some things. There's 3 little pinholes. I don't know if you can see those up there. That's it. I think there's one little dinky pinhole right there. Yeah, there's the puddle. So I'm going to take this to the welder. I'll tack up those little pinholes, even though that'll probably be, you know, closed up by the epoxy. And then I'll have him weld those 2 good holes right there, which I told you about when we were at the pond there. And that's, you know, if you look earlier in the video, you'll see where that was. One rivet had a bunch of holes around it, and then another hole actually in the aluminum. So that's the only rivet we put in that's leaking, which I'm really, really happy about. And the rest are just a couple little holes right there in the back, that problem area that I didn't catch the first time around. So I'm real happy. You know, off to the welder I go. Take them less than a half hour to tack those up. That's not a big deal. Okay, now that I'm done getting all the epoxy and paint and all that stuff off, I'm starting on the rivet work. So to get these rivets out, I don't know if you can see that, but you take a center punch like this, and in the middle right there, you can see where I smacked it with a hammer a couple times. Once I've done that, then you can see this one here, where I've gone and used the 3/16 drill bit to drill a hole. You don't go all the way through or down, but you start drilling down through the head till you think you're almost to the surface of the metal, and usually these will start turning. Once you're done with that, then you take the cold chisel like that on the head and smack it, and that's what you end up with. And then you just need to take and clean those up before you put the other rivets in. The other thing I noticed is, if you look at this keel, this is the thickest part, so I'll probably take this whole keel off. The reason being is these were kind of loose on a couple, and I think when I put all that chemical on here to erode the epoxy, it seeped up under there. You know, I don't know if that'll affect when I put these back. I mean, these are pretty tight, but you may not get a good seal now. I could have probably just used the air hammer and tightened them all up, but I'm in it this far, so I'm going to take the whole keel off. I'm going to clean the metal under and the metal on top, and then when I put the rivets back, I'll put a little bit of that special epoxy that I'll show you later, and we'll put it under there and then put the rivet in and see how that works. So right now I'm going around and marking all the rivets that are disformed. You know, they kind of look weird. See how that's all disformed? And I'm marking them with a punch. And for example, on this body here, I'll have to get in with my bucking bar and a hammer and put the bucking bar up underneath and straighten this whole dent out. And if you have a couple, after you clean these, that are kind of creased or dented, you want to kind of flatten them out. Don't smack them too hard with your bucking bar and hammer. You don't want to crack the aluminum hole or crack any of the aluminum. And then we'll show you how to put the rivets in. So that's what we're doing. I'll probably replace about 100 or so rivets, all of them on the keel, and the ones that look real bad. And when we get done with that, we'll take it to the pond and float test it again and make sure that all of them are holding. If none are holding, we'll mark them. But I'm pretty sure they'll all hold. All right, let's get at it. I'll be back with you in a couple days, which will be seconds to you. Tell me what you think. Thumbs up. Here's a perfect example how that rivet's moving just a little bit. Well, it was when I was hitting on it, but anyways, maybe it was this one. It's one of these. Now it's looking good, but as you drill it just a little bit, you see it move there, just a hair? Let's try this one. See it? So anyway, that's far enough. So I'll get those out. And just remember, when you start drilling, apply a lot of pressure on the drill bit. Make it as straight as you can, but go slow. Squeeze the trigger just a little bit. You don't want high speed. You want lots of pressure and slow speed. I've almost got the keel off. I just got to grind off that weld. I got all the rivets out, but before I do anything else, I thought I'd point a couple things out. These rivets that were here were much like this. I mean, they really look good. You can see there's hardly any corrosion under them. One, because it's the front, it didn't get beat up, but it didn't get all that torque and everything. So those were a lot harder to get. Now, let's say these rivets like this, you can start seeing how where the boat flexed and whatnot, they really got corrosive underneath them. But they were super easy to get out because the heads were wore down, the stems were wore down. I can't take this keel all the way off till I get that thing out, but you can see, I'm glad I wanted to get that taken out because it looks like nobody ever sealed anything really under there. This is just stuff that leaked under when I was in there. And as we go along here, the guy had his weep hole covered up right there, that weep hole. And you can see where all the salt is just piled up underneath the keel. And that would just keep eating away and eating away and eating away and eating away. But all the holes look pretty good. I thought I saw one up here that had like a bigger hole wore in it, but it might have just been this junk. So when I cleaned all this up and I cleaned the underside of that keel up, when I put it back, I'll epoxy that whole thing a really thin coat. There it is. See how big that hole corrodes right there? So that's going to need some attention before I put that keel back on. All right, kids, we're making progress. Thumbs up, leave a comment about this keel and what you think so far. Now that I got that keel line sanded down, I still got to sand a little bit, but I got all the epoxy and crap off. It's time to start working on the trailer. And for that, I'll have links in the descriptions. I bought some of these. I only bought 4. I was going to leave those 2 on. They look pretty good. But then after I saw that these pieces were bad at the top, I thought I'm just going to cut them off. By the time I grind those down, sand everything up, yada, 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 I'm just going to cut them down. So luckily, I bought that Lennox cutting wheel I was telling you all about. So those cheap little thin ones that come with your grinder, you know, DeWalt sells and others. That thing is already cut through a bunch of stuff, and I just cut through all 6 of these brackets like butter. Not like butter, but you know what I'm saying. And there's plenty of tooth left on that blade, so that was the best 20 bucks ever, instead of buying 4 of those thinking, oh, I'll buy 4 of those other blades, you know, and it'll last as long as that. It's like, they're not even close. Don't waste your money with them. That and that hardwire wheel are the best 2 things I ever bought. All right, let's get at it and get these bunks off so I can make new ones. In this photo, you can see some gray spots, and what those are is everywhere I had a small pinhole, I put JB Weld in them because I wasn't going to use that brazing stuff. And there's actually some bigger gray spots as JB Weld you don't see. And I went over all the places where I did use the brazing rods because I figured people told me, you know, after time, the brazing rod stuff works loose. So maybe if there's JB Weld all over it, then it will short up even a little better, you know, possibly by the time I croak, then it'll leak. Then in addition to that, where you kind of see the different colors in there, that's because I used Gluvit. So you can see on the sides where the darker gray is, like on the sides of the boat, that's Gluvit going down all the seams over every rivet we replaced and things like that. So that's what that's all about. Well, we got all of our rivets put in. I took her for a leak test right over there in this pond. Put those 2x4s so I'd stand on the rails, but you can see there's water in there. So there's possibly a small little leak under that V. It's not the rivets I put in, but that would be real light, I think. But basically there's 2 holes back down that way, and I think what happened was it ran up here, and then when I stepped in it, it went over, because you can see it was wet. But anyways, so the 2 leaks, none of my rivets leaked except for this one right here. You see that little, I got arrows going to them because it's already filled up. So there's that rivet right there. You see how bad that looks? And then there's a little hole right in there somewhere, which is weird because it's not the hole back here that had that big area missing, wherever that was, on the keel. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, I gotta take that rivet out and redo it. I'm gonna take the welder and just have him weld all around there and check all that area, because that's the problem child area anyways, where the wood was all corroded and the salt was sitting. But all the other rivets held. There's no other leaks, so I'm confident when I get that done we can put in the subfloor. Looking at this picture, you can see where I made a plate to set there in the center. Now what happened was, the guys before me over the years always left the boat, you know, with leaves and junk in it. They never rinsed it out, and that corrosion created a lot of little pinholes all over. In addition, the keel underneath, remember where I showed you those big holes were in the keel? Because the salt corrosion had got under that keel and made those 3/16 holes even larger. So I drilled the keel out to 1/4 inches, and now I made this plate. So if you look at it, you'll see a bunch of 3/16 rivets all on the outsides and around the perimeter. That's because I put that G3, G4 epoxy that we did on the rivets underneath that plate. Then I set the plate in, and then I went and, you know, put all those rivets in, and that squeezed all that G3, G4 stuff out. Then I did the same thing. I put the 1/4 inch bolts through the holes. I put that G3, 4 stuff in them, tightened them all up, and as good as I could. So when I was finally done and that was dry, then I went ahead and put Gluvit over the top of the whole thing and around the edges like I did before. And so now I've got double like epoxy on the inside of the boat. And then once again, when I flip the boat over and I go and put the epoxy paint on the bottom, that will also seal it from the bottom like as a 3rd coat. So hopefully that'll last for quite a long time. And let's get to the little tools and stuff that we use to put the rivets in. Hello again, kids. There's my son Eric. He comes over and does all the hard work for me. So these are the parts we are waiting to come in. If you look at that, squeeze that, see how that, what that does is it opens and closes. So you stick it in the hole, then you let it out, stick it in the hole, let it out, and that thing pinches the 2 pieces of metal together. So that's what we used, a bunch of those. I don't know the names of them, but I'll have a link to them in the description. But you put a bunch of those along the keel like every other one, and you put your rivets in. So we riveted everything, Eric and I, and epoxied it. Of course, we used the air hammer, and a couple of them, we used all the 3/16. I actually drilled out a little bit and put the 1/4 inch ones in. We took off the jack because that's being replaced, and then this was up higher. He put that down, so it went down, and the front sitting a little better, and everything seems to be sitting in there pretty nice. So we will drag it to the pond and let it sit, and I'll put some 2x4s in here, and we'll put like 3 guys standing on the 2x4s just to look. But those rivet heads, if you look in there, look pretty good. See along that keel where they mashed in pretty nice, plus they're epoxied. So hopefully that'll epoxy it on the outside. We're not doing the inside yet. And then the bunks stick out a little bit like I wanted, so that they're in the water, so it's leveled up pretty well. Got to put a license plate holder on there and get a license plate. Turn that to the guy. And then we can, if that all holds up, we get to paint the bottom. And that'll be the next project. All right, Eric, tell everybody bye.